Welcome back to Reliable Prepper. Today, we're uncovering the art of disappearing in plain sight. Maybe you've watched someone slip quietly through a dense forest and wondered, how do they avoid being seen or heard so easily? In this video, we'll break down the essential skills and thought processes that bring genuine stealth within your reach. Whether you find yourself in deep wilderness, scorching deserts, snow-covered peaks, or bustling urban streets, we'll explore everything from choosing the right colors and fabrics to managing noise and adjusting your movements so that you can seamlessly mesh with your surroundings. You don't need loads of special gear or expensive products to pull this off, though I will point out some tagged items you can check out that make the process easier. If you want to learn, adapt, and truly become part of the environment around you, then stick with me. If you're new here and you find real value in this content, go ahead and subscribe. Give the video a thumbs up and take a look at the tagged products I've highlighted. Whether you're upgrading your camouflage clothing or looking for gear to help you stay silent, there's something there to enhance your practice. Let's jump into how to stay practically invisible when it counts the most. Let's begin by defining what camouflage actually is. It's not just fancy patterns on your clothes or face paint across your cheeks. Camouflage is about blending into a specific environment so well that your presence becomes uninteresting or invisible to any observer, human or otherwise. We're all hardwired to notice details or movements that stand out, and camouflage exploits the way our brains interpret visual cues. If you don't cause color, shape, or movement irregularities, you'll slip beneath the radar of a casual glance or even a vigilant scout. One common mistake is treating camouflage like a uniform solution. You can have the best camo pattern on the market, but if it contrasts with the local vegetation or the background colors, it might be worse than wearing a neutral single-color outfit. That's why environment dictates almost everything. In a green forest, certain browns or dull greens work wonders. In a desert, light tans or muted browns are best. In snowy settings, you want whites and grays that break up the shape of your body against that white backdrop. So the first rule is to pay close attention to where you are. Another key point is that camouflage is enhanced or ruined by how you move. A stationary figure that's wrapped in the right pattern can be very hard to spot, but the moment you stand up and walk in an open field, any observer's eye is drawn instantly to your motion. This applies to day or night. In fact, sometimes it's even more noticeable in bright daylight because silhouettes leap out when they're in motion. You also want to consider details like shine and texture. Many uniforms or boots come from the factory with a bit of sheen, and that can reflect sunlight. A single flash of reflected light might alert someone hundreds of yards away. The same goes for your skin when you sweat, especially in hot environments. Mitigating shine is often as easy as roughing up the surfaces or covering them with strips of cloth or tape. If you're caught without paint or official face camo, mud or a mixture of dirt and ash can provide a quick fix. Don't forget that camouflage is about being inconspicuous. If your environment is mostly muted, an outfit full of bright or sharp patterns might be a red flag, even if those patterns looked awesome in a catalog. Sometimes the simplest solution is wearing dull, earthy clothes that blend with dirt, leaf litter, or rock. Use the environment itself. Brush a bit of local dust on your gear, attach leaves or grass to your shoulders, or smear some clay on your face to break up the smooth texture of your skin. There's also the psychological side. Effective camouflage calls for patience and confidence. If you panic, you might scurry or thrash around, drawing attention. If you trust your concealment, you tend to remain still and methodical, which makes a massive difference. There's a reason many animals freeze when they sense danger. Motionless forms are so much harder to spot. Camouflage goes hand in hand with concealment. Concealment is the actual hiding part, using trees, rocks, shadows, or buildings as cover. Many people confuse concealment with cover, but they are different. Concealment hides you visually, while cover protects you physically from incoming fire or other threats. Combining camouflage with good concealment positions is the ultimate strategy. Stay behind thick vegetation or large rocks that shield you from sight. But also realize that if those objects don't provide any ballistic protection, you're only concealed, not necessarily safe if you're discovered. All these concepts are just the foundation. Next up is one of the biggest giveaways in nearly any environment, that unmistakable human outline we're so used to noticing. Let's take a closer look at how you can break it up and vanish into the environment. Have you ever been out hiking and instantly recognized a friend standing at a distance based solely on the shape of their shoulders or the way their head and neck look against the sky? That's how attuned we are to the human form. So, in an escape and evasion scenario, you want to ensure no one can lock on to that familiar outline. Begin by breaking up your head and shoulders silhouette. That might mean adding foliage or fabric strips around your upper body to produce an irregular shape. It could also mean constructing or wearing a simple ghillie cape that softens the transition from head to shoulders. If you don't have specialized gear, you can still improvise. For example, you could attach small clumps of grass around your neckline or fasten leaves to your hat so they flutter just enough to confuse anyone looking for a rounded helmet or a bare head. A related concept is skylining. Whenever you're on a hill or ridgeline, consider that you could be silhouetted against the sky. This is especially bad if you stand upright at the very crest. People watching from below or from another ridge will see an unmistakable figure highlighted by bright sky. The solution is to stay below the crest line whenever possible, or cross it at a lower, more discreet spot. In extreme cases, crawl or move in a crouch so your shape doesn't pop up above that horizon line. The gear you carry also has a shape. A large rucksack forms a blocky, unnatural shape in a field of smooth grass or shrubs. You can drape netting or local vegetation over your pack to soften those edges. If you're carrying items with strong geometric lines, like a radio antenna or a scoped rifle, you should also consider how to reduce the contrast between those shapes and the natural environment. Wrap or tape them with cloth. Tie on irregular scraps of burlap or attach twigs that mimic local plant stems. What if you need to move quickly? Fast, upright movement draws attention, so weigh the risk of traveling slowly in a crouch or crawl against the benefits of covering distance. If you're sure no one is nearby, you can move more openly. But if you suspect watchers, stay low and use every available barrier to keep your silhouette broken. Even in urban areas, shapes matter. A person creeping around in obvious tactical gear on a city street stands out like a spotlight. Blending in might mean wearing simple civilian clothes and a normal-looking backpack while still using layering techniques inside that pack to conceal outlines of unusual gear. Adjusting your silhouette is an ongoing process, not a one-time setup. If you're in a forest for a few hours but then transition to open farmland, the vegetation you used to break up your shape may not match anymore. Be ready to adapt, discarding old foliage and adding new materials that suit the fresh surroundings. That small attention to detail can be the difference between blending in perfectly and getting spotted by an alert observer. The essence is to avoid anything that screams human figure from a distance. It's all about tricking the viewer's eyes into seeing a random cluster of leaves, a shadow, or a partial stump rather than a person. Once your shape is handled, you also need to master the use of light and darkness to cloak your presence, which leads us to our next discussion. Light discipline isn't only for nighttime. Even in broad daylight, consider the interplay of light and shadow around you. An object in direct sunlight tends to pop, especially if everything else is in shade. If you stand in a sunbeam within a dark forest, you become a highlighted target. On the flip side, if you use the forest's dappled light patterns effectively, you can blend into the patchy shadows and become a difficult figure to discern. When possible, move within the shadows of trees, rocks, or buildings. If you're forced to cross a brightly lit area, do so quickly and at a time you've deemed relatively safe. If you can choose a time of day to travel, consider twilight or dawn. The reduced contrast of early morning or late evening light can help. Just realize many trackers also expect movement during these transitional periods, so weigh your options. Another factor is shine. Anything reflective, metal buckles, watch faces, even some plastics, can glint in the sunlight and become a mini flashlight that signals your location to an observer. You can reduce shine by using tape or cloth to cover those surfaces. Some folks apply dull spray paint if they have time to prepare gear in advance. But that won't always be available in a fast-moving scenario. If you have no other option, smear mud over the shiny spots. Yes, it can be messy, but better a bit of mess than being spotted from half a mile away. Shadows can also betray you. Imagine that you're crouching behind a boulder, waiting for someone to pass. If the sun is behind you, your shadow might stretch out from behind that boulder, giving you away. So always check the angle of your shadow, especially around corners or rocky terrain. In urban environments, streetlights or car headlights can produce a sudden beam of illumination that projects your shadow onto a wall, so stay mindful of that as well. At night, be even more cautious with artificial lights. A tiny phone screen or a quick flash of a flashlight can be seen from considerable distances, when the surroundings are otherwise dark. If you need to use a light source, block it as much as possible with your hand or body. Point it away from open areas and switch it off quickly. Red or green filters help preserve your night vision and reduce the intensity of the glow, though they can still draw attention if you're not careful. Also remember that human eyes are drawn to movement in changing light conditions. If you can remain still while a person is scanning with a flashlight or searching with partial moonlight, you might stay undetected. But the moment you decide to move, that flicker of motion could catch their eye. It's often worth waiting a few extra seconds for that light source to shift away before you relocate. If you incorporate these light discipline tactics with the shape and silhouette strategies we covered, you'll be much harder to pinpoint. Up next, let's talk about the actual patterns you might wear and the materials you use for improvising effective camouflage on the spot. There are two basic philosophies in clothing camouflage: disruptive patterns and mimicking patterns. Disruptive designs use blotches, streaks, or pixelated segments to confuse the observer's eye and break up the body's outline. Mimicking patterns use realistic imagery of leaves, bark, or other environmental features, attempting to replicate what's actually found in nature. Both can work well, but the key lies in matching the general color palette and contrast of your terrain. If you're in a region with lots of tall grass and dull green shrubs, a bright green uniform with large leaf patterns might stand out. Conversely, if you're operating in a rainforest with glossy leaves, wearing a uniform with a distinctly matte finish might appear unnatural at close range. Often the best approach is to blend patterns with added local materials so that you're not relying on your outfit alone. In many scenarios, plain, earthy clothes can do wonders. A neutral shirt and pants that align with the browns or greens of your environment could make you far less noticeable. From even moderate distances, those solid colors become part of the backdrop, especially if you're careful about your shape and movement. Improvised camouflage can be just as effective as store-bought patterns. If you have mud, charcoal, or ashes, you can streak your face, arms, and exposed gear to mask shine and even out your color. Rubbing dust or dirt into your uniform darkens bright spots and reduces any synthetic sheen. You can also grab small bits of foliage from the immediate area, leaves, grass, moss, and attach them to your clothing, webbing, or hat. The trick is matching the environment. If you move from a green forest to a dry brown field, the luscious leaves stuck to you might look bizarre, so be prepared to rework your camouflage. Texture matters more than many realize. Polished fabrics can catch sunlight even if their color is correct. Rougher textures tend to look more natural. Burlap, netting, or coarse fabrics can be extremely useful for creating that rugged, irregular appearance that blends with tree bark or rocky ground. If you do get specialized ghillie suits, note that they can be hot and heavy, so you'll need to pace yourself physically and keep an eye on your hydration. Ghillie suits can also snag on branches, which makes stealthy movement harder. Always keep functionality in mind. Sure, you want to be hidden, but not at the cost of crippling your ability to move or see. If you attach too many branches and leaves, you might rustle loudly or get stuck. Keep it balanced. A small cluster of local vegetation on key points like your shoulders, back, and head can be enough to disrupt your shape without making you a walking hedge that gets snagged on every twig. No matter what pattern or method you use, camouflage must be refreshed. Caked mud might flake off, leaves can wilt and turn colors, and your environment could change drastically from day to night. Continuous adaptation is key. If you stay flexible and pay attention to every aspect of your gear and surroundings, you'll maintain a strong upper hand in staying unseen. Now let's address the equally critical issue of sound and movement, because you can be visually invisible and still give yourself away with every step. Sound discipline is one of those things that can make all your camouflage efforts meaningless if you ignore it. In the quiet of a forest or the stillness of a desert night, it doesn't take much for a snapping twig or rattling gear to stand out like a beacon. Even in busy cities, unnatural noises in a silent alley can draw immediate attention. Let's start with your gear. If you have metal clips, zippers, or any items that can clang together, secure them with tape or cloth. Keep straps from flapping. Water bottles or canteens should be filled in a way that prevents sloshing. This might mean topping them off entirely or removing air gaps so water can't swoosh around as you move. The less random noise your gear makes, the better. Footsteps are another major culprit. Walking in a pile of dry leaves or twigs is essentially broadcasting your position. Placing your feet carefully, even if it slows you down, can make a world of difference. You can shift your weight gradually so you sense a twig underfoot before snapping it in half. Rolling the foot from the outside edge inward can sometimes reduce noise compared to stomping down. In some environments, you can even remove your boots temporarily, though that exposes you to sharp objects or cold. It's always a balance between stealth and safety. Now, how fast should you move? That depends on the situation. If you believe no one's nearby, moving at a decent pace might be fine to cover distance. But if you suspect watchers or you know a search party is close, slow, methodical movement is essential. Fast movement causes more rustling of brush, heavier footfalls, and a greater chance of stepping on something loud. Timing your movement can also help. If there's a strong gust of wind rustling the trees, you can move then to mask your noise. If you're near a road with periodic traffic, crossing open ground as a truck passes can hide your footsteps from anyone listening. In an urban setting, use the hum of air conditioners, passing cars, or loud public events to cover your movement. It's also wise to pause frequently, walk a few steps, then stop and listen. If you made a bit of noise, you can check if it triggered a reaction. By pausing, you also give your ears time to pick up any approaching footsteps or voices. This is especially crucial at night, when sound can carry surprising distances. Considering speed is always about trade-offs, you might want to put lots of distance between you and a potential threat. But if you move too quickly in a quiet forest, you may reveal yourself and end up cornered. On the flip side, if you're too cautious, you might get pinned in one area longer than necessary. It's a judgment call every time, and the environment plus your situational awareness should guide you. Ultimately, the best camouflage in the world means nothing if you snap every stick in the forest or slam your gear against rocks. Stealth is a package deal, blending visually, staying quiet, and choosing the right speed. Let's bring all this together by talking about how to adapt to the specific terrain you're in, because each environment demands its own version of these techniques. Everything we've discussed so far works in principle for any environment, but you'll need to refine your approach based on whether you're in a dense forest, a desert, a snowy mountain, or an urban maze. Woodland areas usually give you plenty of natural cover and concealment, from thick undergrowth to tree trunks and shadows. The trade-off is that there's a lot of potential for noise when you step on fallen branches or dry leaves. The color palette might shift with the seasons, so always match your camouflage to the current look. In summer, you might need to incorporate vibrant greens. In autumn, browns and dull reds might be more fitting. Jungle terrain is similar, but often wetter and thicker. High humidity can make your gear squeak and your clothes cling to your body. Large leaves might reflect more light, so your camouflage should consider the glossy look of that vegetation. Moving slowly is almost mandatory in dense jungle, not just for stealth, but to avoid stepping on snakes, hidden roots, or deep mud. Deserts present nearly the opposite situation. There may be very few bushes or rocks to hide behind, so you'll rely on subtle terrain contours, wadis, or ridges. Desert colors are usually muted tans, browns, and pale yellows, so keep your gear in that range or apply dust to lighten it. Shine control is huge here, as the sun can be intense. Moving in the midday sun might reduce the chance of encountering people, but it also increases the risk of being seen by anyone scanning the horizon. Night travel is often effective in deserts if you can handle the temperature swings. Snowy or Arctic landscapes require white or light gray outfits to merge with the background. Footprints stand out drastically, and the sound of walking on crunchy snow can be heard from a distance. You have to be extra cautious about anything that's dark, like your boots or the muzzle of a rifle, because those dark edges pop against snow. Freezing temperatures can also cause gear to creak or crack when it's moved. In urban environments, blending in means looking ordinary rather than wearing full tactical gear. If everybody is dressed in jeans and hoodies, you might want to adopt a similar style. That doesn't mean you ignore shape, sound, and light discipline, though. Streets can have reflective windows, metal surfaces, and bright lights that reveal you. On the other hand, there are also alleyways, crowds, and city noise that can help mask your presence. Security cameras might be an issue, so consider moving in ways that limit your exposure to them. In any environment, pay attention to advanced detection methods. If someone's using thermal imaging, you'll need to find ways to break up your heat signature. Thick walls or dense vegetation can help block infrared detection. Standing behind rocks or within caves might buy you time, but eventually your own body heat can warm up surfaces you're in contact with. Drones and aerial surveillance demand you consider overhead concealment. A forest canopy can be a solid choice, but in open terrain, you may have to watch for the drone's flight path and time your moves. Dog teams bring scent tracking into the equation. You can't rely solely on visual camouflage then. Crossing streams or traveling across rocky terrain can help disrupt your trail, but it doesn't guarantee you'll fool a skilled K9. Minimizing strong odors, avoiding obvious resting areas, and burying waste are all steps that make it a bit harder for dogs to latch onto your scent. Overall, the environment shapes how you apply every principle. The best tactic is to remain flexible, observe carefully, and realize that what worked great in one setting might get you spotted immediately in another. Keep learning, stay aware of the environment's changing conditions, and adapt faster than whoever might be tracking you. Thank you for joining me on this in-depth journey through camouflage and concealment. We've looked at how to blend into nearly any environment by controlling shape, shine, movement, and sound. Put all these pieces together and you've got a powerful formula for avoiding detection, whether you're trekking through wilderness or navigating busy urban streets. If you enjoyed what you learned, make sure to subscribe and tap that like button. And if you're looking for specific items or gear that can support your stealth efforts, don't forget to check out the tagged products I've selected. It's a great way to give yourself a head start on refining your skills. One last reminder, practice is everything. Don't just watch this and think you've got it all down. Head outside, test these methods in real-world conditions, and adjust until you can vanish into the background at will. Know your terrain, stay calm under pressure, and remember that steady patience beats panic every single time. Thanks again for watching and learning with me. Now go out there, put these techniques to work, and I'll see you next time.